Hello, everyone. This is Lenard Guzman here with Emily Robinson on the Life After D podcast. Today is May 10th, 2021, and we're here. Emily, we're just talking. You just had surgery, so we're still doing the podcast. So we're so dedicated. We're gonna get through this,
We
right?
are. We are. I broke my knee ice skating with my kids and um man that is a painful surgery, but I luckily in the age of 2021 can do Zoom for everything. So I'm still working and can't really do anything in person, but can do lots of Zoom.
Yeah, the divorces will not stop for your knee.
Nope, and since most court is by Zoom anyway, it makes it pretty easy.
All right, so let's get to the news. The news is dominated today by Bill Gates and how do you say Melinda? Is that am I saying? Let's look it up. Melinda Gates, like a huge divorce. Is probably separating their assets. Will probably be like I guess a country. All right, so let's get into it. Um, I like the Wall Street Journal, so let's go with their report. So Melinda Gates was meeting with divorce lawyers since 2019 to end marriage with Bill Gates. The philanthropist had discussions with lawyers in October 2019 around the Microsoft co-founder's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So that went public. So let's see, CNN. They have another report. The whole page, the whole couple pages are filled with the news. But so the consensus is, let's see, let's go through a little bit. Okay. So on Sunday, the Journal reported that one factor in the demise of the Gates 25-year marriage was revelations that Bill Gates had spent time with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex trafficker of minors, according to people familiar with the matter and a former employee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Melinda Gates had concerns about her husband's relationship with Epstein as far as back as 2013. The former employee told the Journal she met with divorce lawyers in 2019, saying at the time that her marriage was, if irrefutably broken, according to there's no F there, there's a V. According to the Journal sources and the documents that the newspaper reviewed, the couple officially announced their split on social media on May 3rd, saying, "We no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in the next phase of our lives." I'm curious how I guess the prenup. I don't think they have a prenup. I was kind of scanning this because this is like a pretty big. It's going to unfold. One more thing. Let's see what they have here. Prenup. No. So they have a lot of money. How does how's this going to unfold? Court, not court.
Yeah.
They own a court at this point, probably.
Right. I know. I mean, that happens a lot when you don't have a prenup. And, and you're a very wealthy couple. I mean, you'd be surprised, I think, how much that actually occurs, but people don't think they're romantic. And so a lot of times they end up not doing them. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people with that kind of wealth will end up hiring private judges so that they don't have to go through the public system. They get helped faster. Maybe their case isn't as public, um, less media on it and stuff like that. So they may go that route or they may settle. Not everybody ends up litigating. It's not really about the amount of assets and money you have. It's about your how you act and your personalities throughout the divorce. I mean, some people are overly generous and just say, here's how we're doing it, let's be done. And then there's some divorces where people have absolutely nothing and they can make them drag out for 10 years. So it really just depends on how they behave throughout the process. Like, he's a businessman. I would assume he would hopefully approach this from a business perspective and be smart about it and make smart decisions. But I guess we'll see. Um, I don't think there's any, since there's no like custody issues, it's probably not as likely to be like a Brad and Angelina kind of thing.
Yeah, they said something like the youngest daughter was like gonna graduate high school and they wanted to wait. And then another thing is the divorce attorney that did the Bezos divorce is the same attorney. So that attorney's gonna be like filthy rich. um, but yeah, so it looks like it's kind of, I mean, it's funny because you think billionaires could figure out how to make like I think Bill Gates was like had some trials for the vaccine and he can't figure out a marriage solution, so we're all vulnerable to it.
It's true. But that's also common is if an attorney gets like a high profile case, then typically they'll just keep getting more high profile cases because now they're known as the celebrity attorney,
All
which
right, I
sounds
think
cool, but it's it's a lot of work to be the celebrity attorney.
yeah, I could imagine like even with like corporate tax filings, there's millions of pages, and I can't imagine it's probably the same realm to go through
Well,
each
and
page.
I think the expectations are really high on you. Like, um, you know, you're not necessarily, people don't expect you to work 9 to 5. They expect you to always be there because they're paying you a lot of money and you're doing a high profile case. So, um, there's some hard things that come with that.
All right, let's move on. I think we've exhausted that topic for now. Okay, so Forbes.com. Here's one that says, "Can my friends divorce and remarry after 60 to get Social Security widow's benefits?" Okay, so today's column says, let's see. My friend lost her husband, who is a high income earner, whereas she was a stay-at-home mom with no education past high school. Unfortunately, she wasn't left much for her. First off, due to some investments that went south just before his death, she remarried in her 50s, but she did not know she would lose her widow's benefit based on her deceased husband's Social Security earnings if she remarried. So she's now 60. She and her new husband have a good relationship, but their assets are rapidly diminishing, and she could really use a Social Security benefit. She would have been entitled to if she waited to remarry. Um, is this possible? Is this true?
Well, that's a good question. It sounds like they're asking if she can divorce so that she can now get the widow's benefits. Um, that's a good question. I don't know because all Social Security is dictated by federal law, not state law. But I know that there's rules against like, you know, things like that, where if you remarry, now you've lost it. It's not like you can then divorce and go back and get it, is my understanding. Um, but again, that would be dictated by Social Security law. However, she would have new benefits off of her new husband if they're married 10 years or longer. She's entitled to derivative benefits. So if she were to do that, then she might lose those while she's going back for the widow benefits. So she really would have to talk to like a Social Security attorney to figure that out. But she has to be careful because she could lose the benefits off her new husband too. So yeah, that stuff's really, really tricky, but it is dictated by federal law.
I don't even think about Social Security more as like my retirement, because it's like
Because it's not going to be around for us, probably.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Maybe there's something else that'll pop up. All right. I don't want to talk about it because it'll be pennies by the time I get older. I mean, we're that age. Okay. So from realsimple.com, tips for recovering financially after a divorce. Learn how to get your finances back on solid ground after a divorce. So this is from Money Confidential podcast. So nearly half of all marriages ends in divorce, and that can leave us not only with the emotional impact, but financial one. So this week, Alicia, a 49-year-old educational psychologist in New Jersey is dealing with the financial aftermath of a divorce, including figuring out how to manage the debt she took on, reestablish a new household, and get back on solid financial footing. I didn't have a bed. I left the desktop computer, things like that you wouldn't necessarily think about. I've incurred a lot of expenses in addition to trying to pay off credit card debt and car loan. Alicia wants to help her two sons with their college expenses. I want to help them as much as I can. Feel like I'm betraying my kids. I know in the long run it'll probably benefit them if I'm financially stable. They won't have to help me out, but my heart is bleeding for them, saying, like, I really want to help you guys. So understanding the legal entanglements, we're coming down here. I'm skipping over stuff that happen when you get married, and what it looks like to try to disentangle those things. It helps you make better financial decisions during the course of your relationship. So that way, whether or not you and your partner end up staying together for life, you could still be well off financially. Okay, so let's go back. So this, I think, professor, teacher, gone through the whole thing, especially when you have young children, and so you're worried. It looks like they're, I think, college. I read college, so it's really tough. So what do you think? What's the best way to kind of reestablish things? Because you're your own single person with two young children.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. It's always a big change for people. And I think that it's very personal and individual, and everybody has their own way of reestablishing their life after you have such a big life change. But I always think, the most important thing is to figure out how to spin it into a positive, find a positive way to uh, have a good outlook, because otherwise it gets very easy to be in that victim mentality, why is this happening to me? This is such a bad situation. How do I get through this? Poor me, poor my kids, and find a way to spin it positive. And if that's reinventing yourself in some way, or going to some kind of therapy, or whatever you need to do, there's always positives to every situation. So you have to be able to find those and, focus on those.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty whopping stat. 50% of people get divorced. And then then if you remarry, I wonder what that stat is. I mean, well, I don't know. You have to probably do a consensus on that.
Well, from what I've heard, even more second marriages fail than first marriages.
Oh, because that person's probably the common denominator. So okay, it's all complicated. It's all complicated. Okay, so let's this one's interesting. This is from smallbiztrends.com. How financial impact does divorce have on a small business? Divorce under any circumstances is messy and an ugly affair, but it gets even worse when you're owner of a small business or when your business partner is your spouse. So this one's from the Small Business Radio Show. Family attorney Tiffany Hughes, she was discussing this. So unfortunately, during COVID-19, there's been a rise in divorces with two spouses living and working together 24/7. So she thinks the foundation of the relationship was probably cracked cracked before the pandemic. So I assume there's a couple who had a small business that divorced. She believes that if every couple had a prenup agreement, then everything would be negotiated ahead of time in the event that the couple split up. So according to Tiffany, a prenuptial agreement covers the division of the parties' present assets and property in the event the parties file for divorce. Deciding what personal and business terms to include in the prenup agreement is extremely important. Tiffany suggests to speak with an attorney to ensure you're protecting yourself and assets. So, so most importantly, when it comes to divorce, businesses are no different than any other assets. If a business owner does not want the value of their company split 50-50 at the time of divorce, they need a prenup. So if you're absent of the agreement, the business would have to be appraised and then either sold, or one spouse would have to buy the shares of the other. So in many shareholder agreements, spouses and shareholders are required to sign addendum that says that they'll sell their stock back to the company if the spouse who is a shareholder gets divorced. This prevents existing shareholders from having to be partners with the divorced spouse. Wow,
Yeah.
that's an interesting article, because then a lot of things can happen, right? Maybe, I guess, the spouse sells off some part of the business. Maybe it's your
Right.
competition. So how does this all play out?
Yeah, I see that with a lot of like law firms and other types of agreements where you're a shareholder. Because we're a community property state, your spouse then becomes a shareholder too, because you share assets. So companies will either make a spouse waive their rights to the shares in the event of divorce, or like what you just said, have some kind of agreement where theirs are automatically sold. Because obviously, yes, that would be awkward if there's a divorce and now the law firm is like shareholders with an ex-spouse or something. But yeah, I do see that a lot. And then there's the question of, well, did they own something that has value and now as part of the divorce you have to buy them out of those shares? Like, do they get the money from those shares because they were technically theirs? So you have to deal with all those issues, and it can get kind of complicated. And a prenup does guard against those things. But the thing with a prenup is you have to have two people willing to sign it. So you can contract to whatever you want, but if the people can't agree on what it is they want, or agree to waive certain rights and things like that, you're not going to be able to get the prenup signed because both people have to agree to sign.
Yeah, in addition to the weird awkwardness.
Right. I mean, you're all happy, you're ready to get married, it's all romantic, and now you're saying, "But if we divorce, you don't get this and this and that." I mean, it is awkward. It is really awkward.
Yeah, it's a deal breaker.
It can be.
All right. With that said, we'll go to prenups. I see something we're gonna get back to. So with that said, let's get to the part of the show where we ask Emily. So people, come in and they'll post things online, whether it's about prenups, child custody, life after divorce, or they're in their journey of getting divorced. So let's get into it. Let's see what the first post is. So this one's getting started. So it's prenups. This is the topic of the day. So I'm thinking of proposing to my girlfriend, but I want to sign a prenup. I want to protect my stuff and custody of my future kids, pretty much. I love her, but this is just the practical thing to do, in my opinion. I heard that you shouldn't sign a prenup unless you're really rich and your partner makes less money than you. Right now, we both have good jobs, but I don't plan on stopping my career at any point. I want to keep on working, and if she chooses to stay home, I'm gonna advance my career. Do you sign a prenup, whether you did or didn't? So they're asking, so if it worked out for you. So, um, this topic. How this all, like, prenup, no prenup? What's the
You
best thing
know,
to do?
every situation's different. I've done a lot of divorces where there have been prenups, and they can make it very easy because, it makes things very straightforward. But then there's sometimes where people contest the prenups, and that makes it very expensive and messy. And then there's other situations where maybe the prenup was fair at the time it was signed, but now it's not fair. And that can cause problems because they're not ironclad. There's ways to, get out of them if they were, let's say at the time you signed, you both had equal funds, but after that somebody became the next Bill Gates, and you waived your alimony, and and they're Bill Gates now. That's not really fair. So, um, they if everybody stays on the same page and agrees the prenup is enforceable at the time they're divorcing, they make your life so much easier. But there are a lot of ways that they can be challenged and things like that. And then it doesn't make your life easier. So it just depends on the case.
Yeah, just get the awkwardness out at the beginning. All
Yeah.
right, let's go to the next post. So this is kind of COVID divorcing. So it's like, please don't tell me I'm getting a COVID divorce. This is so silly, but I haven't told many people yet about my pending divorce, and I'm already dreading people saying or assuming or judging it was due to COVID, or say something like it was a COVID divorce breakup. COVID and being, quarantined was not the reason for my marriage issues. You could argue it was amplified and it was inevitable, but the reasons were, there's so many. Anyway, I really random thought, but I just don't want others to pity me or assume that my partner and I weren't able to cohabitate during a COVID. I don't want my divorce to be lumped into the COVID category. Even with the timing of this case, are there a lot of people who feel this way?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that probably a lot of people do feel that way. And a COVID divorce doesn't necessarily mean it's because of COVID. It could just be that things weren't good and COVID was the last straw, or, things came to a head during this time. So I don't think there's such thing as a COVID divorce. There could be many reasons for the divorce. And just because it happened during this high stress COVID time doesn't mean it has anything to do with COVID, or it could. But I think that that's just sort of a catch-all name that it may be offensive to some people, and they shouldn't be called that. But it's like how after World War II there was a baby boom and all the baby boomers, right? Like, you know, uh, it are people offended that they're considered part of the baby boomers because of the times? That's just what was happening. There was a big baby boom. I mean, they might be, but would they have been born anyway? Maybe. So, it's just a name for a kind of a phenomenon that's happening right now. But I think if it's offensive to people, then, that term shouldn't be used for them.
Yeah, they should just wait. Like, just wait, I don't know, 5 years, and it will be called something else. So
It's
okay,
true.
yeah. This one's an interesting one. So this one's like a alimony child support one. How to get the best financial outcome. So this person's in LA, Los Angeles, California. So the wife is filed for divorce from a 20-year marriage. So I've been the primary sole earner at the entire time. The lawyers are now telling me that even in the simplest settlement, all assets are split in half. So it's mainly the house, the accounts, and the investments. The wife gets roughly 20 to 25% of gross earnings, tax-free forever, and support. So this seems extreme. To use an example, is required to give her both 1 million and 100K a year tax-free. She can just retire at this point. There's no incentive for her to earn anything to reduce support. Aside from telling me this is just the way it is, suck it up. Has anyone been through this type of situation? Did you negotiate a better outcome? Is there an option to avoid lifetime alimony? And if so, how do you go about it? Is this going to require spending 300K on legal and lawyers, or can this be mediated? Can there be a mediated outcome? Is there an amicable strategy to get this outcome without lots of filings and fighting over it? Are there any suggestions or guidance or feedback available?
Well, that's good questions. I mean, it depends so much on the situation. It depends on how long they've been married, how old they are. Does the wife have any prospects of working? there's so many factors that go into that. Uh, lifetime alimony, it's called that, but it's not necessarily a thing because at some point he's going to retire and then he may not have to pay anymore, or she's going to get a job and then he may not have to pay anymore, or it might go down significantly. So a lot of factors can happen along the way. So it just really depends on their situation. If, she's very ill and has no prospect of working ever, and they're older, then yeah, that may be true what the lawyer said, and he's on the hook and he's going to have to pay until he retires or something like that. But if she's young and able to work and the kids are going to be out of the house at some point, then that may not be the case. So there's just a lot of factors to look at.
Yeah, it's I had a friend who's in LA who kind of went through the same thing, and I think his thing was they did a lump sum at the like the settlement at the beginning of it. So some
You can do
people,
that too. That's something you could negotiate for sure.
so everything is negotiable, right?
Everything's negotiable except for um, child support. You can't waive child support because that's against the law. But aside from that, pretty much everything's negotiable.
Yeah, so don't have any kids.
Right. That's a good lesson.
Impossible. Okay, so look, that's all the time we have for today. Emily, do you have any things? I know things are opening up. I think Disneyland. I think you can go to Disneyland if you're a California resident.
Right. Yeah.
You can get out. You can get out. What else? What else is going on?
Things are opening up. I think in June we're supposed to be pretty much fully open. So that's great news. I think a majority of people are vaccinated now. So schools are supposed to go back in the fall full time. So I think things are good and we're getting back to normal. Um, Ironically, I'm now stuck at home for like 6 weeks, not able to drive because of my knee, which is so funny because about a year ago is when we were on lockdown and same thing happened. So at least I got like a trial run of what it's like being stuck at home and working from home.
You should have had your surgery a year ago. By this time, you'd been recovered because you've been at home most of the
I
time.
know, would have been perfect, right?
Yeah, life just doesn't. It's just timing. It's just life does never gives you good timing. It's just
Right.
so.
That's right.
With that said, look, it's time. We got to go now. So tune in for the next episode of the Life After D podcast. See you next week. Bye.